Okay, good morning, everybody. We already started and we're up to the readings adapted from the big book. And Anne Marie is going to read reading number 1.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Anne Marie, alcoholic. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through. And though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
And Christina, number 2.
Number 2, no attitude or holier than thou, no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are conditions we have found most effective. And page 18, and be quick to see where religious people are right, page 87.
And Amy, number 3.
If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but 2 alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out of your consciousness how miserable you really are, page 25, and the other to ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, page 83.
And Lauren, number 4.
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will. Page 85.
Thank you, Lauren. And George, number 5.
And just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of human calamity.
Page 68. Okay, thanks, everybody. And then it's actually says head in the clouds and feet firmly on the ground from page 1.
I'm sorry, I didn't have that.
That's okay. Okay, I'm gonna mute everybody and we're gonna get going here. Mute all. Yes. All right, thank you so much. This is session number 43. This is about step 6, the prayer for willingness. And this is January the 2nd, 2022. And just briefly, I want to go back over those readings because we're in I've tried to change them. I mean, you know how it works is you just get, everybody goes to sleep. You start reading as powerful as it is, you take a vacation when you hear something so often. And I've tried to change these readings, but honestly, I just can't come up with something better. They're sort of, no, they're not in the order of the book, but it just starts with this Silkworth saying, I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read the damn book. And though perhaps you came with the attitude you've been carrying all your life, which is contempt prior to investigation, which is I can judge the truth from the false. And instead of doing that, instead of acting on contempt prior to investigation, that you will remain to pray, which, he's saying, we haven't even gotten to page 1. And he's saying, if you want to recover from your disease of alcoholism, you're going to have to take this prayer thing seriously. And we're on step 6, which is we're coming up on the 7-step prayer, which we'll talk about next week. And step 6 is about becoming willing to pray. And this prayer is like psychic, spiritual soul surgery. This prayer, we're going to ask that our character defects, we're going to pray for their removal. Well, that's not an easy thing. I mean, it's like you're praying that a part of yourself that you've been living with for a long time is to be removed. And the truth is that the truth for me is that, and what the book tells me is that I lack power, that as intent as I may be on living a fulfilling, satisfying, joyful life, I lack the power to pull it off. I can't do it. And the way we're given to do it is to really assess where we're at, which we do in step 4, and then disclose that to another human being in step 5, and then become willing to pray for self-destruction in step 6, and then to actually pray that prayer. And my experience with hindsight, because I really didn't get this at the time, is that the actions of becoming willing to make amends and then actually making amends is what's going to happen naturally when I pray for the removal of my selfishness, and I start to understand that if I really do want this selfish self-centeredness removed, I've got to allow this power of love and intelligence to remove from me the stuff that's not actually useful to my creator and my fellows. You know, my feelings about me don't get in the mix. It doesn't say remove from me the stuff that's making me feel bad. That is the truth. The stuff is making me feel bad. My remorse over my selfish conduct, my selfish, self-centered, self-obsessed conduct makes me feel bad about me, but that's not the point. The point is that I'm trying to become useful to my creator and the people around me. And what? So I'm on this St. Ignatius kick, and Robin, who's not on here today, but Robin and I we decided we were going to take this book, and it has 52 meditations based on our 12 steps and the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, and it's 52 of these meditations. So we're going to try to do one a week. We're starting this week with meditation 1, and so I've been digging in a little bit. And first off, I should tell you that this Ignatius guy, this was 500 years ago. He's a military man. He goes through a conversion experience. He winds up writing these exercises as a spiritual 12 steps to bring people to a different experience of their lives and to make them more useful to the world. And he founds the Jesuit Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, and the Jesuits go on to, you know, there was somewhere where somebody, I don't know who it was, declared that Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob and the 12-step movement of Alcoholics Anonymous was the most significant spiritual movement of the 20th century, of the years between 1901 and 1999, the most significant spiritual movement of that 19th, 20th century. And if you go back and you're thinking about, you know, spiritual movers and shakers, it would be hard to ignore St. Ignatius. I mean, the Jesuits have had a profound effect on education and service around the world. And you can take this right to St. Ignatius and what he told people. And I want to get to that, but just working backward from there, you think about luminaries that we've had, and you get back to Jesus, and right around Jesus was Muhammad, and then working backward, you get about 500 BC was the Buddha, and was Lao Tzu or whatever his name is, and Confucius. They're 2,500 years ago, and it's just, I don't know. I get little goosebumps, and I get pretty excited about being part of this AA deal. Any rate, so I probably have 12 different translations of St. Ignatius's spiritual exercises, and the format is that what they've done is, because it's a translation, and by the way, I know how to get myself back. So next week is on step 7, and we're going to get to do something I haven't done in a way long time, and I'll send the PDF out early this week. But included in the PDF are one thing that's called My Creator, and it's all these passages in our book that use the word my creator, our maker, whatever, and we're going to read them as a group, and I'm hoping that you will print out the PDF so that we can hear each other's voices read these things. But also in there is my interpretation of Emmett Fox's interpretation of the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes have been through 3 translations themselves. Jesus spoke in Aramaic, it gets translated into whatever is the language of it winds up getting translated into Greek, and then it gets translated into English. So just how many steps is it removed? But these Beatitudes are 8 attitudes that we are taught to try to cultivate in order to deepen our relationship with the spiritual dimension of our lives. And I get pretty excited about this stuff, because it's nice to feel a solution coming at you instead of the resistance, instead of the contempt prior to investigation that I normally feel. Well, which, and another way to say contempt prior to investigation is I don't trust. You can say this stuff. You can tell me to pray for the removal of character defects and ask for redirection and do as I'm directed to do. But my little mind, in its self-preserving style, starts punching holes in what you're trying to tell me to do, or just declares that won't work. It took me 2 years in here to even pray. And I will never forget a moment of looking at my sponsor and going, do you really do this prayer stuff? I didn't use the word stuff. I used a different word that starts with S, but, and I remember him looking back at me, with this, are we gonna have real trouble here or whatever? But, and then I remembered my first prayer that, deep into financial insecurity and praying this, please remember, somebody said, try the fear prayer. What's the fear prayer? Well, it's on page 68 in the inventory on fear. It says, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And so what the hell, I'll try it. And I got something. my prayer was, please remove my fear of financial collapse, and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And what I got back was, in no uncertain terms, I mean, this was a feeling, not thought. Jack, you can be the person I want you to be, and you don't have to be rich to be that person. And it was like, I mean, today, looking back, that was my first experience of conscious contact. I'm consciously aware of something coming through me that I did not create. I'm way off. Okay, but I know where I left off. So this is one copy, and essentially it starts off with 20 observations about trying to do these exercises. The very first thing is he defines spiritual exercises, which is forms of prayer and forms of action that will bring about a spiritual conversion in the person doing them. And after 20 of these observations, he finally gets to the title. And the title, the title is that these spiritual exercises have as their primary purpose the conquest of self and the regulation of one's life, so that you make no decisions under the influence of any inordinate attachments. Now that's one translation. Another translation calls these inordinate attachments disordered affections. And we talked about it last week, which I love that one. Inordinate attachments just sounds judgmental and cold and dry, but disordered affections, it's got a little bit warm, affection is a warm, fuzzy term, and disordered just means they're not working for you. They're not actually helping you. And you got your priorities screwed up. You're making your human self your priority, your body and your mind. You're seeking comfort, essentially. And it's affecting you negatively, because the truth of your experience is you're restless, irritable, and discontent. And the only thing that takes away the restless, irritable, and discontent is alcohol, or for us. So now I've lost my way. So I think what he's saying, because he's not concerned with addiction to alcohol, it's actually before you get to, after these introductory observations, 20 of them, he finally gets to what they call the first week. And then the body of the exercises are in these, the first week, the second week, the third week, and the fourth week. And they're really different things that I'm looking forward to getting involved with. So I just want to say that I'm getting a lot of motivation and inspiration from reading this stuff and seeing how it shows up in our steps, because I don't think Bill Wilson, he was operating off the Oxford Group stuff. I don't think he had any awareness of the Jesuits and these spiritual exercises until this Father Ed Dowling came into his life in the early 40s. And Ed Dowling was not an alcoholic, but a Jesuit priest. And he became Bill's spiritual director, although he came to Bill looking for God. Isn't that something? He came to Bill looking for God, nothing to do with alcohol. I want to know what you guys have got going on. And he was the one that said to Chuck Chamberlain, you know, Chuck, I think going through this stuff is just getting a new pair of glasses. And it became the title of Chamberlain's book, A New Pair of Glasses, which just is a edited transcript of a workshop that he gave. Okay, I better start getting back on track because we're rolling here. Anyway, so the second reading that we do in the morning is talking about the Oxford Group principle of establishing conditions. If you want something to happen, your work is establishing the conditions. And we get this a lot in amends. We get directions on how to establish the conditions under which an amend can successfully take place, or the reverse, these are conditions under which it won't effectively take place. But really, when you think about it, we're trying to use prayer and action to establish the conditions under which this spiritual power can make itself manifest in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment life. You know, we're trying to make real this thing that's stated several times in the book, where their conviction about the presence of God in their lives is unquestionable. Oh, I think it says is the most important fact of their lives. I think that's what it says. Wow. You know, talk about disordered affections. You know, if my affection is all me, and trying to do the things that make me feel good, there ain't any room for God. And establishing these conditions, what we're doing is establishing the conditions under which spiritual power can make itself felt in our lives. And we do that through prayer. And we do that through, and prayer includes meditation and contemplation. Contemplative prayer is the ultimate aim, which is simply communing with this presence, where prayer is asking and meditation is trying to listen, be receptive. And contemplation is sitting in that presence, staying with that presence, and allowing it to heal you, which is the second part of the second step. This is not just a matter of believing. This is a matter of inviting this power to change us, to heal us, to bring us to an experience of love instead of resentment, fear, and remorse. Although I want to make a case that remorse is actually conscious contact, because I think remorse is when we feel bad about our behaviors. That's like Jim the car salesman. I vaguely sensed I wasn't being any too smart. That's conscious contact. It's vague, and it's supplanted or overwhelmed by suddenly the thought crossed my mind, if I just put my whiskey in milk, I'm going to be okay. I can do this. I can drink and I'll be okay. So I'm getting off again. So the work is establishing the conditions, and I think that takes a while it's taken me a while to learn. I need a pretty ordered life. You know, I have a weekly routine, and when we're done with this, my weekend begins. About 10 o'clock today, it's like, whoopee, I get to do whatever I want the rest of the day. But then tomorrow it starts back up, but I have a regular schedule. Each day I know who I'm going to talk with and what meeting I'm going to go to. And I get up at a certain time and have a morning period of reading and reflecting and often writing. And I am so much more comfortable in that than the way it was before. I'm so old that I wake up kind of stiff, so I have to, I'm showering every day now because it's a way of gaining some flexibility. I'm getting off, but at any rate, this reading number 2 is about establishing conditions that if it, right before the 3rd step prayer, first of all, quit playing God. They give us a reason. It doesn't work. Next, invite God in. Invite God in as your director, you're the actor, as your principal, and you're the agent, as your parent, and you're the child. Invite God in. Try to form a relationship with this power. And then the 3rd thing is do as directed. And then that promise of pause, ask, listen, do is serenity, which is what number 5 says. Just to the extent that I pause and I ask and I listen and I do, I'll get to experience serenity, right smack dab in the middle of the human calamity. I can watch people lead horribly misguided lives and do selfish, injurious things. And I may be guided to do or say something about it, but somehow I will be able to experience that with a sense that on the spiritual level, everything is okay. In fact, it's better than okay. It's good. Which I only feel when I feel like I'm playing the role that I've been assigned and I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. I just want to point out number 3, because this is really about motivation. I think working in these steps, working inside AA is about motivation. And understanding that what they're telling us is you only have 2 choices. Go on, keep on doing what you're doing, and get the results of that. If you can be honest about the results of that, and you don't run away from what you're feeling through alcohol or sex or shopping or gambling or whatever else it is, or accept spiritual help. Establish the conditions under which God can come into your life. And later on, I think it's the beginning of We Agnostics, to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not easy things to consider. We alcoholics are, can we go over that doomed to an alcoholic death again? What's that mean? I'm considering these 2 alternatives, and how bad is that? How long does that have to go on, or whatever? And then of course, number 4, what a high bar step 10 puts in front of us. It's essentially saying, you know what? The only thing you're supposed to be thinking about all frickin' day long is how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. And Saint Ignatius, he's the first guy I've heard. This shows up in, I think it's the foundation. your job, pal, is to love, honor, and serve your Creator, and thereby, he says, save your soul. I'm going to say, play the role you've been assigned. You know, effect what your soul is here to do. You are a spiritual being, some people call a soul, having a human experience. You are not here for your body and your mind. You are here for the learning and growth and service of your spiritual soul. And if you will love, honor, and serve your Creator, you'll do whatever it is you're supposed to do. And you know, love is an ordered affection. Honor is a mental function of respect, gratitude, appreciation. And serve is serve. Think about somebody else instead of myself. Me, 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 me. And then we already talked about number 5, pause, ask, listen, do. Okay, I better get on here to step 6. Oh, I know what. Oh my goodness. Oh. Well, I know. Read it. When in doubt, read. If we can answer to our satisfaction, these are a bunch of questions about how solid is our work so far, then we then look at step 6. We've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. And it's going to ask a bunch of questions. Are you ready to let God remove from you all the things which you have admitted are objectionable? Key thing. Every resentment that I write down, every fear that I write down, every sense of remorse that I write down about my not only sexual interactions, but physical interactions with other human beings where selfishness has ruled the day. Hopefully we see that these are objectionable, that we don't want this stuff. I don't want to live a life under the influence of my resentment and my fear and my feeling bad about my selfish actions. But I think it's hard to see. I don't think we always see it, because other than being drunk, we don't know what the alternative is. You know, I know alcohol promises me I will relax and I can enjoy whatever it is, seemingly enjoy. The problem is it comes with a hangover, because I'm not a safe drinker. Or I'd still be drinking because it works. But this is I think we've quoted old man Bob F., who used to be around here. AA will do for me slowly what alcohol did for me quickly. You know, we get there, but it just takes longer and it involves some things we don't want to do. So if we're going to establish the conditions, part of that is we're going to admit that resentment and fear and remorse are objectionable. We don't want them. And then can he now take them all, every one? You know, supposedly in step 2, we have acknowledged that this power that we not only believe in, but that we believe that this power can restore us to sanity, can heal us, can make us whole and guide our lives, empower our lives, not just guide them, but give us the power. Can he now take them all, every one? And then they give us, I think, some pretty serious, significant advice. If we still cling to something we will not let go of, we ask God to help us be willing. And we do a lot of talking about red light, green light in here as a technique, and it may not work for you, and maybe you can find something else. But red light, green light means, God, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. I really want to tell so-and-so off. I really want to tell him, give me a red light or a green light. Good idea or bad idea? And I think I most often, I'll get a yellow light because I'm right in some way. But the fact is, if I tell them off the way I want to tell them off with my badge, you're in a heap of trouble, son. It's not going to work. 4 says we avoid retaliation or argument. Why? Because they're not helpful. So I'll get a yellow light because I have to be in a better place to, it's really astounding. When you think about 67, 68, 69 pages, resentment, fear, and remorse, they just say these amazing things that I am to avoid retaliation or argument, really avoid resentment. Why? Because they don't work, they're not helpful. And what am I to do instead? I am to seek a kindly and tolerant view. It's always the same: patience, tolerance, kindness, love. That's it, though. That's what St. Ignatius was aimed at too. Those are manifestations of conscious contact, spiritual power. So at any rate, this passage is saying, if you are not willing, here's what you do. You pray for willingness. Well, for me, it starts with, do you want me to do this or not? Do you want me to write this 4th step inventory? Do you want me to go to my sponsor and say all this stuff? Do you want me to learn how to pray? Whatever, red light or green, just give me some indicator, yes or no, or caution, maybe. Yellow light is maybe. Let's talk about it more. And then the promise is that if I get a green light, then I can ask for the power, which is no different than the willingness. Then I can ask for the power to actually do it. Okay, I want to jump to something else, and because we're running out of time as usual, because I got a big mouth and a lot of caffeine on board. So in this handout, there's an interesting thing about Bill Wilson's depression, which shows up in the book Pass It On, which is his biography. But because of time, we're just jumping over it. But it's really 2 things he says that are on the, it's step 6 pages, December 2021, page 3. And it's in the middle of the page. Sobriety alone was insufficient to provide a comfortable life. You got to remember, this is sobriety, and then sanity, and finally serenity. The goal is serenity, which actually is an indicator that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Why all this pain? What have I done to merit this suffering? And then he says, the answer I get is that pain, quite as much as pleasure, is in God's providence. In the long run, now this is him making a statement. May not be true for you, but he's saying this is true for me. In the long run, everything evolves for the better. I've lived most of my life with a sense of it's all going to hell. And I can show you why. Everything is going to hell. Everything evolves for the better, he's saying. And then he says, not because of pleasure, but because of pain. You know, people don't even come into AA until they've tried to stop drinking on their own and they can't pull it off. We're a fellowship based on pain from pleasure seekers who've not gotten the pleasure that they want. And we're trying to move from pain, motivated by removal of pain. Okay, so then right after that come these 7 mental laws of Emmett Fox, and I just want to run through them. And so I don't know how many of you do this reader, but this is the Emmet Fox reader. And this was established by his editors after he died. They took all his books, 8 books, and they picked out little sections to put into this reader. And January is the most amazing month. It starts with the Wonder Child, which is really his description of getting your inner higher power into consciousness and allowing it to take over your life, is what he says. Is just what our steps talk about, where instead of having a life run by the ego personality, the human ego personality, it's a life not dominated, because that's not really but led by the soul, who is the soul is naturally patient, tolerant, kind, and loving, because it's got a much longer perspective than the human mind and the human body. According to this guy, the soul's been around literally tens of thousands of years, where my human body hopefully will get 80 to 100 years. Okay, so in these great mental laws are going to show up in January, and I'm putting them in a different order. The first 3 are spiritual principles, and then the last 4 are tools, are literally specific tools for trying to put the principles into play. And the first principle is what you think upon grows. If you obsess with your human condition, and the main parts of your human condition are resentment, fear, and remorse, those will all grow in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience. If you try to focus on, sorry to use the G word, God, or the spiritual dimension of my life, that relationship will grow. So it's just a principle. What you think, where your attention lies, is going to grow in your experience. If your attention is on fear, fear grows. And then the second thing he says is there are 2 things at work. There's a intellectual component, and there's a feeling component. Now you could say mind and body, because the feeling is a physical feeling. And what he says is interesting. He says the intellectual part doesn't matter as much as the feeling part. Right thought, but no feeling, nothing's going to change. Wrong thought and lots of feeling, it's going to grow. The wrong thought's going to grow. And I think that's the hardest thing, is the shift for me has been the shift from a fear-based life, running from the things that I think are going to make my life difficult, to a love-based life where I can experience the calamity the physical, mental calamity present all the time, everywhere, with serenity, a different perspective. And finally, number 3, the challenge is that this is all going on unconsciously. You know, this stuff isn't happening. What he's saying is, you can be on your game in your head, but if all this stuff is bubbling around there in your subconscious mind, you're not going to get too far. It's going to rule your life. And as Jason would probably say, you know, therapy is bringing all this unconscious stuff up into consciousness, so we can try to decide what to do about it. And then he gives us these 4 techniques, which of course show up in our steps directly. First is the law of substitution. You can't drive a negative. If I say to you, don't think about what you fear, your mind is instantly going to go to what you fear, you know? And it's why we say, well, think about what you're grateful for. That's a way to shift from fear to gratitude. But you can't make it go away, even though we do have the prayer for removal, actually. But he's saying you can't make it go away on your own power, but you can substitute a positive thought for a negative thought. And then the law of relaxation. This is important because he says, you know, in physical work, the more effort you make, the better, the more you're physically going to accomplish. But when you're talking about mental work, you got to relax. We relax and take it easy. You know, we stop fighting. And actually, this is the case for meditation, or purposefully trying to stay still for some period of time. And then number 6, the law of practice. You know, practice these principles in all our affairs. This is not about perfection. This is not about accomplishment. This is about steady day-to-day progress in all our affairs. And finally, the law of forgiveness, which is, well, I'm not going to say the most important one, but I mean, forgiveness. This is a deep letting go of our contempt prior to investigation. This is a deep letting go, in my case, of my need to try to control my environment. And I work pretty hard at trying to control everything. And my work is learning to trust higher power, spiritual power, the spiritual dimension, I don't know, whatever. Instead of trying to control everything so I can avoid the things that I know are going to light me up with resentment or fear or remorse. So I just want to stop with saying, to me, this whole thing is about learning how to pray and then incorporating prayer into one's daily life. And the challenge is learning what to pray for. For me, learning what to pray for. And I think our prayer for removal is dynamite. You know, and it starts with the 3rd step prayer: relieve me of the bondage of self so I can better be the person you want me to be. And if you go to 67, 68, and 69, relieve me of my desire to retaliate and give me a kindly, tolerant view. 68, relieve me of my old idea that by whining and complaining about my life and the people in my life, I will feel better. Because I think that's what's going on. I think somehow whining and complaining is as effective as resentment and impatience in making things be different. And then it has this really, relieve me of my whining and complaining so I can better demonstrate your power, your love, your way of life. And then finally, you get to page 69, relieve me of my thinking that my judgment of other people's conduct has any positive effect at all. We are not to be the arbiters of anybody else's sex conduct, it says. I think it means I am not to judge, period. Actually, I'm forgetting that, we're eventually going to get the spiritual Ignatius's rules for discernment. Rules for discernment. I think that's aimed at, I am not to judge, other than if I ask God to direct my thinking. And instead, on page 69, instead, we are to ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. I think it's one of the most important lines in the book. I think it's the essence of step 11. Please mold my ideals. Take me away from resentment and fear and remorse and selfishness and self-delusion. And you tell me how you want me to be, which I know for me is going to be patient, tolerant, kind, and loving. About everything, all the time, no exceptions, no matter what. And I think when I can do that, I actually experience serenity. I've gone on too long, as usual. So I hope you'll come next week for step 7, and I'm gonna gong this gong, and then Buck's gonna shut off the recording and see if anybody wants to say something. So Happy New Year, everybody. And congratulations again to Christina and Anne Marie. And hope to see you next week. Okay, bye for now.